Hey, welcome to this training on how to ethically influence your process to take action faster so you can close deals faster. And this is regardless whether you are closing small deals, big deals, mid-market, SMB, enterprise, if you're an account manager, it does not matter. This will apply to all sales processes to really help your process move even faster. Now, in this video, we're going to cover the Chan code to ethical influence, and I'm going to teach you a simple 3-step process that's embedded within discovery. So first, I want to walk through the Chan code of ethical influence. And the code actually says something very, very simple, which is ultimately you want to connect with the prospect logically or emotionally. You want to open them using questions. You want them to have them come to a decision. This is a decision to answer, to trust you, to make a buy decision, etc. And then ease expand, which is expand the conversation, expand the sale, etc. And the way I really think about this, it's literally like when you're asking questions, it's like your prospect is an onion, okay? And each question you ask is peeling the layers of the onion. And our goal here is to get to that white core you can see on the screen. So right here, this is where the magic really lies. This is where the deep intrinsic drivers of a person that makes decisions lies. The mistake a lot of people make is, even if they take the powerful framework, they only ask the first layer of questions. They stay on the outskirts of the onion. They don't get to the root. And the root is where you actually move the needle. This is very, very important. You'll notice my whole process of connect, open, decision, expand, the whole process is based on this very, very simple premise for every part of the process. It's methodically designed for results in a very, very ethical way, because it's not about pushing, it's not about convincing, it's not about trying to pitch someone to close. It's being able to ask questions using a Socratic method of asking questions like you've learned so far to open them up to get them to actually move forward. And we want to get to that deep core by using our questions like a sharp knife. And the better the questions, the better the answers we're going to get, the better results we're going to get. And like I mentioned before, if you don't get the answer you want to ask a better question. So that's kind of the essence of psychology of it. But let's actually walk through tactically, how do you actually execute this process? So here's a very simple 3-step process within discovery. So the first thing is you ask an open-ended question, kind of open the conversation up. Now, the mistake a lot of people make is what they end up doing is they ask a question and they go to the next question. That's not the right way you want to go about it. So just to reiterate the point, we're just peeling the first few layers of the onion. Those are just the first layers. You must go deep. The fortune is literally in the follow-up questions here, okay? Again, most reps stay at the surface level. So when you go deeper and you actually ask some of these questions, them potentially might be more uncomfortable, but it gets them to think. What happens is this gives them insight when they start realizing, oh, wow, I actually may have a bigger problem than I expected. This is really powerful because the average rep stays very surface level, but the elite rep goes super deep. And what happens is this gives you a competitive advantage because they're like, wow, you're making me think, you're teaching me new things as a result of asking the questions you're asking, and you're making me realize things I didn't realize before. This is how he positions you as a trusted advisor. So the first step is you ask the open question. Now the second is either we use mirroring or clarifying questions or follow-up questions using the RIM framework, which I'm going to teach you the RIM framework in just a second. And then we want to repeat back as a question for understanding. So again, you have an open-ended question, you have mirroring or clarifying or follow-up questions, which could be a series of questions, could be multiple questions, and then we repeat for the question for understanding. Now, let's walk through what the RIM framework is so you can really understand how to extrapolate 10x value. RIM, which is going to be the relevance, the impact, the motive. What's the relevance? What's the impact? What's the motive, right? So if we were to go a little bit deeper, understand this, internalize the psychology, but you want to understand like, hey, so based on their response, why and how is this relevant? Whatever they respond with, you want to just really think to yourself, why and how is this relevant? Okay? And what's the impact? What's the impact whether it's good or it's bad? I'll give you some examples in a second. This can be inward or outward. Right? I mean, it can be impacting them directly. It can be impacting their company. It can be impacting their employees or their customers. And then you ideally want to make it as quantifiable as possible. Like getting the hard numbers really helps if you need to build a business case later on. And if you do it up front, it's much easier because you don't want to make any assumptions. So for example here, if you can uncover the maybe direct impacts, such as direct costs, such as X issue is costing us $50,000 a month in customers. All right, or indirect costs, X issues wasting 30 hours a week, which leads to $24K a month in labor spent on fixing it. Or it could be the opportunity cost. If we can fix X issue, it'll lead to an extra $100,000 in net new business without more work. It's not just simply asking like, what's the impact of this? Right? It's going a little bit deeper. We'll discuss that in a second, because most time prospects have not really given a thorough, deep thought towards the actual relevance or the impact or even the motive of it. So, and then M is the motive. So what's the personal motive or benefit to that? What's their personal gains? So just to give you another example, I want you to really illustrate this point. Like, I want you to imagine if you're using a microscope to examine something. How does it look to the naked eye? Just by itself, you're looking at like, how's it look? Okay, now what if you use a microscope now and you put it at 10x? How does it look now? You just zoom in more. How about at 20x? You zoom in even more. How about at 50x? You zoom in even more, okay? And that's basically what you're doing when you uncover something useful in discovery. For example here, you would uncover a relevant point that falls within a powerful framework. The pain, the opportunity cost, the wanting, etc. You get my point. And then once you uncover that relevant point, you want to zoom in with the RIM framework. You're leveraging essentially what, how, and why questions. Now, here's where this might get a little bit tricky, because the questions are very dependent on the first layer questions and what you sell. So you want to really think like, how can I answer the RIM questions above? How can I uncover the relevance? Why and how is this relevant? How can I uncover what's the impact, if it's good or bad? And how can I uncover the motive? What's a personal motive or benefit to this? What you're going to do here now is then you're going to basically maximize the pain. That's the cost of inaction or opportunity cost, or the gain with hard, tangible numbers. You want to get logical and emotional buy-in to 10, to like a level 10, right? Level 1 is nothing, 10 is like 100% now. Otherwise, they're going to choose a competitor or worse. They'll do absolutely nothing to stay the status quo. The pain to stay the same must be greater than the pain to change. I'm saying again, the pain to stay the same must be greater than the pain to change, because there's always been some sort of pain to change. But if they know if I don't do anything, it's going to cost me far more, they're going to take action. So for example, if I get a tax bill for $100,000, yeah, I could not pay it, right? But the pain of them coming after me and having extra fees and fines is far greater than the pain of staying stagnant and not doing anything about it. So I'm going to take action. I'm going to pay my tax bill, right? So that's really important to understand. So again, if you remember, if you go back to what discussed before in discovery, the goal is you uncover that current state, you uncover the future desired state, and you uncover what's the gap in between. What's the opportunity cost? What's the cost of action? And the greater we can make this happen, this middle section go, the more likely they are to actually take action. Let me give you some very specific examples here. Now, you want to go as deep as you can to the core of the onion. And also, you want to be very cognizant of your tone, because if you do this wrong, it may come off like you're challenging them. So potentially you want to read your personality, and you may need to adjust a little bit and be a little more inquisitive. Maybe you need to put a little context in. So let's go through some examples. Number one, first is the mirroring process. If you're not familiar with mirroring is simply repeating the last few words of how they answer your question framed as a question. So they say, the reason we want this new sales engagement tool is because we want to grow the business. Average rep says, great, check, I'm done. You, who's an elite rock star, potentially can mirror them. You can literally just repeat what they just said. Hey, which is grow the business. That's it. Notice my tonality shifted to more inquisitive, and then I paused. So the mistake some people make is when they do mirroring, they actually answer the questions for them. So they'll say, grow the business? Like, do you mean by 10%, 20%, 30%? Do you mean by like margins, or do you mean by like revenue? What do you mean exactly? Ask too much. You want to speak less and ask more. So for example, literally, just give me simple as grow the business. Stop talking. And they can repeat as necessary depending on what they actually tell you, okay? Now, this could be, then there's also clarifying. So for example, this could be paired with mirroring or done on its own. So for example, they said the same thing, we want to grow the business. Got it. So how will you do that? So you're asking one at a time. So you don't want to barrage them with, how will you do that? What do you mean? Why is that important to you? Tell me more. For example, he said, how will you do that? Well, what we're going to do, our plan is actually, we're looking for new real estate property to find 2 more operations to expand our business even more. So we're looking in Austin, Texas. We're looking in Miami, Florida, looking at New York City. Those are pretty good markets for our business. Exactly. Got it. So can you help me understand why that's so important for you? So you can see how this kind of piggybacks off each other. It's really important for us because we've actually had a really good track record so far, double-digit growth every single year since my dad started the business. And when I've taken over, I want to continue that growth and make him really, really proud of me. Wow. Tell me a little more about that. What do you mean specifically? So you can see how you can really start going deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, I want to give you some example questions. Hey, when you say grow the business, what do you mean exactly? Hey, when you say you chose software X because it's easy to use, what do you mean exactly? So by the way, understand this. When people say certain things, it has a different meaning for each person. So for example, if I go to dinner with my parents somewhere, to them, if it costs more, even if it's a nice plate, if it costs more like $10 a plate, they're like, oh, this place is expensive. They live in a small town. They're like, this place is expensive. It's like a $15 plate. And for me, I live in Portland, which is not really cheap, but a nice restaurant. The plates can be $30, $40, $50, $100 plus, depending on what type of restaurant it is. So for me, the expensive is a variable, right? So when I ask my parents, hey, expensive, what do you mean? They're like, oh man, it's over $10 a plate. That means something very different versus talking to someone else who lives in a big city. They're like, oh, it's real expensive, but it's like $400 a plate. So the context, this is why it's really important, again, of why you want to ask these questions, instead of assuming whatever they say is to be the same truth that you perceive it to be, all right? So some other sample questions. Example, hey, can you elaborate on that? How do you mean exactly? Hey, what's causing this to happen? Can you help me understand why this is so important now? Can I ask why? Can you be more specific? Hey, what's a specific example of that? Hey, what do you mean by that? Hey, walk me through an exact scenario. Can you tell me more about that? Can you share with me? Can you describe for me? Can you explain to me? So you see how powerful this can be, especially when you have the first layer of questions, and now we're starting to dive in deep. Can you help me understand why that's so important for you? What's the ripple effect of you making that decision? How does this personally help you? These are not the only questions you can ask. These are just simple prompt questions that help you. And all these questions are the questions that solve Vault, but this is like really powerful because now this takes allows you to go even deeper. Now, just to really elaborate this point, I want to show you a visual word example. So let's just say, for example, I sell a product experience platform that helps double closing ratios for software demos. So my first layer question is, what made you reach out to begin with? They say, to increase our closing ratio. I can say, well, great. Hey, what's your team's current closing ratio at year to date? They'll tell me whatever it is. Where do you want it to be? What's the significance behind that specific closing ratio goal? So for example, they might say, oh, well, they're currently closing at 20%. Where do you want it to be? We want it to be at 30%. What's the significance behind that specific closing ratio goal? They'll tell me, well, if we get to that number, we're going to hit certain revenue targets. We're going to go from $1 million to $1.5 million. Got it. What do it mean for you specifically to get your team to that goal? Well, if we get to that goal, that means I actually get an extra $50K bonus, which is awesome. Cool. And I can go deeper on that if I want to, or I can say, hey, what would it mean for your team? Well, for my team, this is what it means for them. What would it mean for your company? So you can see how powerful this can be. This is like a first layer RIP. Now, let's just say I want to go even deeper. So RIP part 2. How many demos are your team doing on average per month? They'll tell me whatever it is. What's the average deal size? Now, let's just say, for example, if they told me something like the team is averaging 100 demos per month and they're closing 25% of them at $25K per deal on average. So if I can do some quick math, now I know they're closing about $625,000 each month. Now, if I know their goal is to get to a 50% closing ratio, then the revenue impact would be going from $625K to $1.25 million per month. So I can do this math with them because of the numbers I just uncovered that they just told me. So then if I understand that to be true, I can go even deeper with other RIM questions such as, hey, so to go from $625K a month to $1.25 million a month, which is an additional $7.5 million annual revenue, how will that impact your company? How will that impact you? So you can see how powerful that can be. So if it's a CRO or sales VP we're talking to, they might respond with something like, well, that'd be nuts. I blow my comp plan out for sure, which would be easy, a few extra $100,000 for my family, and not to mention the equity I get. So, you could stop there, or you can continue to keep going if you want, right? So just give me an example. So, hey, so even going deeper on that, what would that mean for your family to earn an extra few $100,000? So you can kind of see how powerful this really can be when you start going deeper. Now, let's say, for example, we're in part 4. So Lisa, I hate to ask this, but what will happen a year from now if the team is still stuck at closing at 25% and you're still hovering around the $625K mark? So now what's going to happen? What are they going to do? They can tell you all the negative consequences of no action or no result. And ultimately, this is just you telling their additional motives and impact. So I want you to think about this just for this level of depth we just went from. This is a transformation. So what started as, hey, our software can help you close more, is now our software can help you close more, and leads to $7.5 million annual revenue and exponential growth for the company, $200,000 to $300K in personal comp for the VP, $100,000 in equity for the VP, family security and benefits, etc. And here's what's really interesting. We could continue going if we really wanted to. We didn't get to the other major benefits that would happen as well, such as happier reps, better culture, reduced turnover, more cash flow for us back in the company, more promotional opportunities, etc. Now, here's what's really cool about this. The inverse of all this, the cost of inaction, is getting zero of that, right? So you can see, like, by this example right here, this is how you get deep quantifiable buy-in while getting emotional buy-in, all right? And your job is to help them bridge the gap between this all. Otherwise, they will see your solution as a cost versus an actual investment with a clear return on investment. This is how you can get so deep off literally one question, like one initial surface level question, and you're able to go that deep. Now suddenly takes you to this whole process and helps you build this connection all the way through on the benefits, the business impact, and then personal impact as well. So this is really powerful. So this is why what you don't want to do is, when you're going through the legal pain, legal gain, you don't want to just like checklist of questions of just surface level questions, because the magic is actually in the follow-up questions. The mistake a lot of people make is they stay at the surface level, they don't peel that onion. So this next step is recapping powerfully. This is really powerful for, number one, for just active listening, but also for you, this helps you ensure you actually heard them properly. Okay, like sometimes we can cover so much stuff, it's hard for us to even to capture all those things. And this is actually why personally I think you should take handwritten notes or typed up notes, even if you use an AI note taker, because this will help you capture some of these things to be able to recap back very quickly. Because when you can recap back to them what they just told you, they will feel more heard and they'll trust you more. So you also, a couple of key things as well. You want to make sure you use their name as well when you recap back, and you want to make sure you understand properly before moving on. Okay. Now, this thing I'm going to show you next, you don't have to do it for every question or every few questions, but you definitely want to do it for all their big goals and pains, as this drives everything. Literally, this step right here is going to help you improve your ability to influence ethically. So here's how I actually look. It's actually quite simple. So after clarifying, now you repeat what you just uncovered. That's it. So very simple, right? Now, if you cover a lot, it's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to say, okay? But you want to just cover the big main points, all right? So, hey, okay, Lisa, so if I understand you right, you want to grow your business to 5 new locations next year because you wanted to have your parents retire and not worry about finances. Is that right? That's right. And you can do that through acquiring 5 more franchises in Southern California. Is that right too? Yes. So you see how powerful that really can be. So just to clarify again, so you ask the open-ended question, we do the RIM framework, which we just covered, right? And then repeat as a question for understanding. So literally super powerful in being able to build trust very fast. Now, let me show you another example of advanced recapping. This is like a really powerful one with this framework, which is, okay, name. So if I understand you right, due to problem is leading to other problems, which is leading to negative business impact, which ultimately leads to negative personal impact. Is that right? Hey, okay, Lisa, if I understand you right, since your team is manually tracking AR through Google Sheets, it's leading to data entry errors, which is leading to the bigger issue, not collecting payments on time, and that has been up to over $50K a month, hitting bad debt reserves, which is impacting a monthly cash flow for the business, which obviously causes you and the founder a lot of stress. Not to mention, you don't want to lose your job over this or make the company go under. Is that right? So you can see like how if you cover these things as part of that, by simply recapping it back and they hear what they just told you, it's like, oh wow, that's kind of crazy. When you can take the next level, it is just absolutely killer for them saying, yeah, you're right. Because now they're like, oh man, because you're not making stuff up. You're literally just recapping what they already told you. This is just a very powerful and a dangerous tool if used in the wrong hands. Now, in a perfect world, if you've done an excellent job through the whole process, they're going to like you, okay? They're going to trust you. They're going to have a clear active need. They'll feel urged to take action. They will probably be salivating for your solution. Oh my God, I'm so solve a problem. Even if they don't know what it is or all the specifics yet, right? But ultimately, you will know everything at a deep level in the powerful framework. Okay, the reality is if you did not achieve these objectives, you go back and ask more questions, right? Ultimately, if you did not, you have not earned the right to present your solution after the business. And the mistake I see a lot of people make is they don't do a good job with this. They go super surface level and then they try to present their solution. And ultimately the customer says, let me think about it, and they get ghosted. You don't want that to happen. So let's talk about some rookie mistakes to avoid. Number one, not being 100% present and listening to what they say and how they say it. This is where it becomes much more fluid. The surface level questions are pretty easy to kind of follow through. You could definitely go check this out, which is not what I recommend. It's the deeper follow-up question that takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to, but it requires you to be 100% present and listen to what they say and how they say it. Because otherwise, if you're not present, you're not going to be able to see if they suddenly change their tonality to maybe softer or more scared or more nervous or angry. You won't be able to read those things. You won't be able to adjust, and that makes it actually decrease your closing ratio. Another mistake is talking too much. So you get into this mode, and suddenly you're just so excited, you start talking way too much, and it hurts you, right? Number three, not diving deep, making it quantifiable. So that's a huge mistake. So some people say, hey, well, I'm selling something you can't really quantify. I guarantee you, whatever you sell, there's always a way to make it quantifiable, right? There's always a way, okay? You just have to uncover what that's going to be. Otherwise, you will get stuck, and suddenly it'll seem, it'll be basically a price battle at the very end. So it can be quantifiable in time. It can be quantifiable in specific metrics to have, but there's always a way to make it quantifiable. Number four, being scared to uncover the hard quantifiable numbers and impact due to lack of experience in the industry. So if you're new in your role, you're selling to
new industry, new ICP, you might be a little scared to ask some of these questions. Okay, but here's the thing: unless you ask, you'll never learn. Like, you'll never learn how they really measure and what's really on their mind. Okay, so if you notice you're doing research in an ICP, when you understand them at a deep level and you also apply to discovery, they will trust you more. But the mistake some people make is they don't really understand some of these numbers they have, so they don't ask the questions, and actually hurts them on the back end. And yes, maybe sometimes it's going to hurt you when you ask some of these questions, and maybe they'll cause you to lose some deals up front. But if you can learn and really understand the numbers that's important to them, what's quantifiable, and the impact it's really having to their business, this allows you then to utilize those learnings for future calls, which will pay you long-term dividends. And if you never ask, you'll never learn. That's just reality. And another big mistake is not recapping to ensure her and profit. It's like, oh, cool, got it. On to the next thing, right? So that doesn't really feel good. It feels very transactional. Just think about, even if you're having a conversation with a friend and they just went through and explained maybe a tough situation they're going through, and then you're like, got it. And then you ask another question. You know, like, that's really tough. For example, I was having a conversation with a great friend yesterday. He's telling me about some really tough stuff that his daughter's going through. Just a lot of health stuff and really scary stuff. And, you know, there was stuff I want to talk to him about. And if I was being weird and transactional, I'd say, got it. Sorry to hear about that. Hey, so let me talk about this now. That would be terrible. So instead, I'm like, oh man, you know, I don't want to say his name because I want to protect his confidentiality. Hey, name, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. That sounds pretty scary that your daughter's going through X, Y, and Z and she's feeling this way. Man, that's pretty rough, man. How you holding up with all that? I can bridge, because I basically recap back. It's the same type of concept, right? It's just being a good human being, right? So at the end of the day, it's not rocket science, but sometimes when we're in these sales situations, we forget how to be human and how to have a conversation, and be curious, but also be genuine and be real in a good way that actually connects with human beings. So let's talk about what to do next. Okay, so here's a really, really good way kind of practice. If your company is recording call recordings, grab your last 5 call recordings and listen at 2x speed how you're currently running discovery calls. After you hear maybe a surface level question, which you're probably asking some type of surface level question anyways, pause the recording and write down 2 to 3 good follow-up questions. Start doing this multiple times. This will help you start building some of the neural pathways in your brain to get in the habit. Do this multiple times, because this will help you to get good at practicing this way. Now, while doing this, write a recap line as well. How could you recap something powerful that you learned in that conversation in the past already? So we're working on building this a habit. Now, you want to practice this. This is hard to do because there's nothing to memorize here. You're really just understanding so you can apply it. This is really, really important. Okay. Now, a couple other bonuses. Number 1, practice RIM and recapping with friends. So I mentioned with a buddy, right? Practice with friends and family conversation. Your friend says, hey, I think about quitting my job and starting my own business. Instead of say, oh, cool, that's great, man. And asking like some real surface level questions like, hey, oh, cool. Hey, that's very exciting. Hey, what got you to this point? So that's like a way better question than, oh, cool, where are you going to start? Okay. So the thing about how powerful that can be, start thinking this way. This takes a little bit of skill to get really, really nailed over time. So I do recommend you do these things for sure, but you may want to watch this multiple times. You really internalize this thought process and this methodology, because if you internalize and process, this will make you actually a better communicator in anything that you do, whether it's to your friend, your family, your spouse, to even internally, externally. If you are a sales leader or founder, you run a sales team, to prospects, this is actually really powerful for like all parts of your life.